not stick my hand on that, let me tell you. Folks, how you doing? Nick Jennison, it's the Monday Guitar Show. We're doing the thing that we do on Mondays, which is hang out, fail to turn off backing tracks, and talk about the guitar. We are, of course, down in our London studio, shooting a whole bunch of content for you guys. This time round, got some exciting stuff coming from here. It is on the topic of gear. And when we're shooting content, we like to talk about it on the stream. So consider this a little bit of a preview of something that is coming your way. For you Lick Library members, it'll also be available in the store very soon. Now, if you're new here, let me tell you what's going on. So we do this every Monday. We hang out, we chat about the guitar. Our objective is to make you a slightly better guitar player when you leave us than you were when you arrived. And of course, also, because it's a lovely big hang, we get to touch base with all the members of our streaming community, which is growing by the day. It's lovely. We've got guitar players from all over the world who come and hang out. We talk about the guitar. It's a good time, right? So listen, today our subject is a deep dive on signal flow. So signal flow being what happens when you put different things in different orders in your guitar signal chain. And what should you expect to put where? What should you do to balance things when they're in certain parts of your signal chain? You'll see what I mean. Now for this, I'm gonna ask James to go to the top-down shot. We are using our trusty Neural DSP Quad Cortex. And of course, if I just fail to move this, because that was a me problem, if I actually just put that in the right spot, we have basically just the screen to look at for this, which is nice because this will give us a perfect visual representation of signal flow. I think any modeler is a great device to explore this on. Any pedal board that you put together is a great choice for this, but this particular one with the big screen, it gives you this immediate visual feedback on what you're doing with your signal chain, which is nice, and it means it's a little easier for me to teach you what's going on with this stuff. So also, in addition to this, if you want some of the captures that we're going to be using today, like this one, for example, which is Super Kraken Solo, I captured a load of my amps back in my own studio, and I've just put them on my personal Cortex Cloud account. They are all public, so if you want to go to, find me on Cortex Cloud, it's just Nick Jennison. You'll recognize the hair. And all of these captures, and all the ones that I'm using, anytime I'm using a Quad Cortex, they're all available there, and they are free, so just go and grab them. I made them because I like to use them down here when I'm in London, and I also like to use them on the road, so that's basically it. Anyway, before we get too far into this, I want to say some quick hellos to everyone, and I also want to remind you that today's stream is brought to you by licklibrary.com, where you can go for lessons, all sorts of lessons, so many lessons in fact that it became a problem, and we had to implement things like one-to-one guided coaching because people were going, you guys have got all the lessons, you've got too many lessons, which lessons do I need? Well, we've got you back. So if you go there and you go, there's too many lessons, don't worry, our man Stu Shields and the rest of our support team will help you out with that. In addition to this, you can go to our other sponsor, if you want to call it that, guitarinteractivemagazine.com, where you can go for news, reviews, interviews, basically anything that's not a lesson, go to Guitar Interactive Magazine. Every lesson in the entire world, go to licklibrary.com. And I also want to know from you guys, as per usual, we want to know what guitar you're playing today. I'm playing Kim's PRS. This is not my PRS. I wish it was. Maybe one day. Who knows? It's very expensive though, and I do not need a new PRS. I do not need. He's looking at me. He's sat on the sofa, and he's going, maybe you do. I do not need a new PRS. Let me tell you, I've got plenty of them. So anyway, and I also want to know, in addition to which guitar you're playing, what you plugged into today, because this will it'll give me an idea of what you guys are playing through, because we talk a lot about the guitars, we don't talk a lot about the rigs. So let us know what you're playing, let us know what you're playing through, and I'm going to say some hellos to you all now. So let's start at the very top. Marcin is, of course, the first one in the door. We love a bit Marcin here. He's one of our oldest streaming friends, been with us basically since day one, got fabulous taste in guitars, a lovely player as well. We like Marcin. Marcin's great. PJ, also a long-time friend of the stream, lovely to see you. Timothy Appling is here, who's playing his Gibson SG Supreme Ebony into a Boss Katana KTN Mini X. That's quite a cool choice, man. Like, it's a nice guitar, but those little amps there, they're great because they have everything you need and basically nothing that you don't, including the size, because they're tiny little things. They're great. Love them. Good choice. Very good choice. Mike Seedorf is in the house. Lovely to see you. He's playing a Fender Stage Master. Ooh, cool choice. HH, 24 frets, Floyd Rose, reverse headstock, and purple. We love a purple guitar. Very nice. Very nice, very nice. Kim is, of course, playing a very special Les Paul. This is, of course, the Michael Caswell Les Paul that lives in this studio. Always a privilege to play that guitar. I was actually using it to film some content earlier on today. I'm very familiar with this instrument, so we had this chat, and it was like, oh, well, what should I play? I'm like, why don't you play the Caswell? So yeah, it's a good choice. Anyway, our friend Helmet Strap, great question. I'm going to flag this up here, right? He says, let me read this out. Evening all. Playing in the tiny flats, so volume is an issue. Intrigued at how you get such a massive sound at such low volumes. I use a THR-10 at home. We're going to get into that today because I play at quiet volumes basically anytime I'm not on stage. And if I'm on stage, I'm usually using in-ears anyway. So you have to excuse me, I'm going to cough. And I'm not in charge of the cough button, so you're just going to have to deal with the coughs, but hopefully the content will be good enough to put up with them. So we'll get into that because it's a really good question, man. Larry Warren, we're going to miss you, but that's okay, Larry. We'll catch you on the replay. Cranky Tom's tuning in, playing, oh yeah, it's the RG 540 again. Cool guitar, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. Okay, playing straight into his MacBook. Interesting choice. I'm leaning over here so I can actually see the comments. Good choice. Steve Louth is playing his Dragon's Eye Burst Ibanez into a QC. Right, Steve, you can go and get these captures, right? So don't go now, like once the stream's done, go and grab these captures because you'll like them. They're free. It's basically all of my amps, and it's the settings that I use on those amps. And when I've A-B'd them back and forward, it's like, yeah, this is accurate. So if you want the tones that I use in my studio, you can go and have them. It's nice. Fog Cornish, lovely to see you. Great to have you on board. Asking about the mono synth on the QC. You know, I haven't, which is strange, but I haven't spent that much time with the QC since I've done the update. So I'm a slow updater. I don't know if you guys like this, but for me, slow updater. Like I'm still on Logic 10 and it's 2026 because I've always got projects on the go and we don't update mid-project. Justin Ray's in the house, lovely to see you. I've got lots of comments. We're going to race through these, but I'm going to say hello to everyone. Catmadu 1962 tuning in, playing his Les Paul traditional. Dylan Jessup's here. Our friend Mal Riley's in the house. Mal, always good to see you with his JS 140. Cool choice, very nice. Our friend Dreams, my friend Paul's tuning in. Lovely to see Melton Face on a Monday night. Thanks, man, I appreciate it. Our friend, I'm gonna butcher this. Kestius Venslovas. I hope I've said that right. I'm really sorry if I've said it wrong, but it's lovely to have you, man. Welcome on board. Who else do we have? Let's say some quick hellos. Riffmaster is here. Riffmaster is here, rather. Riffmaster 34. Great to have you. Block 18 is in the house with some different usernames going on here. My friend. Oh, what else we got? Let's see. Simon 3 Hodges. So good they named him twice, 3 times. Playing his Custom 24 doing Axe Effects, Friedman HBE with a tube screamer in front, signal flow. I love a bit of that. A Fender Rory Gallagher from our friend V. Kelly. Nice, very good choice. Make sure, have I got everyone? I think I've said hello to everyone apart from Blitzco, who's tuning in, playing a Positive Grid Spark in his office with a Strat. You know, it's good. It's a good choice to keep a Positive Grid Spark in your office because it means you've always got something you can plug into and go. I like a bit of that. I used to take one of the little Spark Minis around with me on tour, but I'm kind of we do the headphones thing now, but it's a very good choice. It's something about having a little lamp on your desk. Love a bit of that. Anyway, I think we've said hello to everyone. If we've missed you, I apologize, but don't worry, we'll get to you. And of course, don't forget, if you have questions, drop them down below. We'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. So, signal flow. Let's talk about it. So I'm going to ask James to go to the top-down camera for this, please, because we're going to take a look at our quad cortex. And what we have here is the patch that I threw together about 30 seconds before we rolled this stream. And this is a very simple example of a signal chain. So the way you can think about this is the signal chain runs from one side of our quad cortex. This is a visual representation of how guitar signal chains work. Runs from this side to this side. It literally runs the way that we read in Western nations. We read from left to right, so the sound of your guitar flows from left to right. Now, in terms of what I'm plugged into, I am plugged into, from a guitar cable, from this guitar into the quad cortex, and then that signal goes to here, it comes out here, and that is literally what you're hearing. So everything you're hearing tonight exists on this string, so to speak. And consider this to be an analogy for an actual physical signal chain. So this big white bit here could be a long cable coming from my guitar to the front of this, which is an amp. And then these could be little cables connecting up all of the other devices. What I have here is a cabinet. I've got a reverb and a delay over this way in a position that's somewhat unusual, and we'll talk about that. So let's first of all begin with the most basic guitar signal chain, which is literally nothing. zero. Because what we want to talk about today is designing signal chains and the order they should flow in, and what happens when you move things in different orders, and what happens when you change one thing at some point in a signal chain or the other. So if we've got a question from PJ saying, are you out to a PA? I am running out to our studio monitors. So we've got a set of KLK monitors in the studio. That's what I'm listening through. Because to be honest, I'm really used to playing through studio monitors. I do a lot of playing in studio, in my own studio down here. I do a fair bit of session work when I'm teaching. I'm usually playing through studio monitors because it's in a classroom. So I'm used to the flavor of the monitor, so to speak. So I really don't mind playing through studio monitors. Some people find it kind of anodyne. We'll maybe head some of those concerns off over the course of this stream. So yeah, that's what I'm playing through. That is what I'm playing through. Just to remember, with a very good question that we'll get to later about a seriously tight budget, small, you need a fly. Oh, he's got a fly rig on a very, sorry, I thought it was recommendations you're looking for there, Justin. My mistake. He's got a very small pedal train fly rig. Signal chain is guitar into Moore pitch box, into tuner, into a Zoom multi-effects in front of a clean amp. That works like a treat, I'm sure. Anyway, back to our signal flow. So this is, I'll turn everything off, the most basic kind of signal flow that you can possibly have, which is literally what goes in comes out. So I've plugged my guitar in here. This you can imagine as your ears. This is where your ears are. So guitar's here, sound goes through nothing and comes out on the other side directly into your ears or whatever you're listening on at home. This is our sound. Not exactly inspiring. It's a cool tone because this guitar has a lovely voice, but it's not it really, let's be honest. You're not going to play Back in Black on that and get the big grin of rock. So what we do with this is we insert devices onto our path, which you can think of as an analog for physical pieces of equipment. So you can take a pedal, you could take an amplifier, you could take a delay pedal or an overdrive or a wah pedal or a speaker or whatever. We're going to start with the most fundamental one, which is a guitar amplifier. And for this, I'm going to use my own captures. So these are captures of my amp. And I'm going to start with this one. This is Studio JTM Chime, which is one of my favorite clean amps in my own personal collection. Now this will sound okay. It's actually not a million miles away from our clean signal. And that is most definitely due to the origin of this amp, starting as a Fender Bassman, which was an early guitar amp back before we realized that guitar amps were supposed to have color and supposed to have interesting things about the tone. But I'm also going to insert this. This is another Marshall amp that I've captured, which is JCM 800. And this sounds thus. Yak. I'm sure you agree. Pretty disgusting in the grand scheme of things. That sounds a little bit terrible. And this leads me to the first thing that we must observe about our signal chain, which is this. Guitar amps, and specifically guitar speakers, impart color. They impart color onto your signal. There is a fascinating piece of music history that we talked about last week when we talked about amps, all about amps. We talked about the idea that the Fender Blackface amplifiers were superseded by the Fender Silverface amplifiers. And the Silverface amps were, Paul's saying it's mixed ready for any black metal album. It absolutely is. It's just buzzsaw nonsense. But anyway, the Silverface Fenders that came after the Blackface Fenders were actually an engineering improvement. Now, in any other field, an engineering improvement is usually a good thing. If you take a look at a car from 10 years ago and you take a look at an equivalent model from the current day, the new one's probably a better car, unless it's some old classic. The new one's probably a nicer car because it's got all of the upgrades. So it's got more toys and the seats are more comfortable and it does more miles to the gallon and it's safer and all the things that we like about a car, it's better at. Now that is apparently not the case with better engineered guitar amps, because a better engineered guitar amp was the Silverface Fender because it was cleaner, it had a more flat frequency response, it didn't have as much color, didn't break up as early, and everyone hated them because the Blackface ones just sounded Right. So this leads me to this bit of wisdom, which is these devices in your signal chain impart color. They impart color, and not only do they impart color, they have to be there, and we want them to impart color. It is desirable that they color our sound, and they are almost as much of the instrument as the instrument itself. But a guitar amp can't be a guiar amp on its own. It has to make sound from somewhere, and we have to plug it in the physical world into a speaker. So we're going to take our speaker cab and we're going to throw this onto our chain down here, and we'll see what it gives us. I'm going to choose my go-to quad cortex cab because I'm a greenbacks kind of guy. I'm going to choose this one, which is our Brit 60A with 75 hertz cone greenbacks. Don't worry about the mics. That's not something we need to be concerned with, but we've got this. Now, let me throw the clean amp on top, and I'll take the speaker cab on and off and show you what it does. Take it off. There's a bit of color there. That's nice. Now, what about the same thing, but this time with the JCM 800, which is our distorted amplifier for this demonstration? Let me turn the speaker cab on and off and show you what it does. So, no speaker cab. Gross. Yes, speaker cab. The sound of rock. Very cool. Now, this will tell us another important and interesting bit of wisdom about signal chains. So what this tells us is that things matter in terms of the order that they appear, and they also matter in terms of how potent that effect is. So certain strong flavors, let's say the JCM 800, because it's introducing lots of distortion, has a very strong flavor. This JTM has less of a strong flavor because it's a cleaner amplifier. It is doing some stuff, but it's introducing fewer harmonics. So things that have a very strong flavor will impact things this side of them differently to things that are this side of them. And similarly, things with less of a strong flavor will have less of an impact in this direction or in this direction. So in terms of things mattering in terms of order, we know, because we've plugged amplifiers in before, that we physically cannot go from guitar to speaker to amp. It's not possible. It's not something that can be done, because how could you plug into the speaker and then come out of the speaker into the amplifier? The amp would blow up if you could achieve it, but you can't. But what we're going to do is we're going to move our speaker before our amplifier in the signal chain. It's a hypothetical impossible situation, but I want you to imagine that's what's happening. So we've taken our guitar, we've plugged it into the speaker, and then we're running the speaker somehow into the amplifier, which is then coming out and reaching your ears. Take a listen to what this sounds like as opposed to the speaker in its natural configuration, which is after the amplifier in the chain. Turn it off. Neither of them sound any good, but we can also hear that the effect of turning the speaker on and off is somewhat minimized by this very flavorful amplifier that we've got there. If we move it to this side, however, check this out. Now, isn't that interesting? Because the difference between the speaker cab being before the amplifier, I know it's impossible, being before the amplifier and being after the amplifier, it's very pronounced. So this tells us something else about signal chains, which is that the order matters, and things will be, that the influence of a device will be minimized, or something, the influence of some piece of equipment will be minimized if it is followed by a very, very flavorful piece of kit. And usually that means something with lots of distortion. The more distortion there is, the more it minimizes the effect of things to the left of it, as far as we're concerned. We can also say that things that have a lot of distortion in them, a lot of flavor in them, like our JCM 800, are then being filtered by the stuff that comes after them. So I want you to imagine this, right? So imagine let's say we're putting some clothes on to go outside, right? Put some clothes on to go outside. It's a little analogy for you. The speaker cabinet is a little like this. The speaker cabinet is a little bit like my coat. And at the minute, I'm wearing a t-shirt. I got some merch from a festival we played last year, which is Rock Imperium in Cartagena in Spain. Cool festival. Interesting town. It used to be Carthage, apparently. Anyway, if I put a coat on top of this t-shirt, you wouldn't see the whole t-shirt, but you'd still see the design, because this t-shirt has a bit of a design going on here. If I put a transparent rain mac over this, you'd see the whole thing. So if the coat has a big color of all of its own, it'll block some of the pattern. This is a little like a speaker cab, and this t-shirt in this instance is like my amp. However, if this was a plain black t-shirt, if it didn't impart any color of its own, it wouldn't matter whether I put a coat on or a rain mac, you're gonna see the same pattern because there is no pattern. This is where I'm getting at. The JCM 800 with all of its flavor is something like this. The cleaner amplifier with less flavor, plain black t-shirt. You put a coat over it, you're not really going to notice much of a change to the t-shirt. But this, you'll really spot the change. Hopefully that makes a degree of sense, because we are going to go a little bit further with this. But this is Signal Chain 101. Things matter, and the place you put them and what you follow them with matters. So let's go from here into something that is perhaps more like a full traditional guitar signal chain, which may be some pedals in addition to an amplifier and a speaker cabinet. So let's try some overdrive pedals. And for this, we're going to also go between our Studio JTM, which is our clean amp, and our JCM 800, which is our dirty amplifier. We're going to keep the speaker cab on for all the following examples, and I may even move that somewhere else in the quad cortex to give you more of a clear visual on this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by inserting an overdrive pedal. And for this, we'll pick maybe something like let's do this one. Let's do a green 808. Everyone knows what that means. That is an Ibanez Tube Screamer. I'm going to throw the clean amplifier on and start moving my Tube Screamer's controls around. And let's take a listen to what it does. Here is the Tube Screamer switched off and switched on. Big difference. There's a big noticeable difference there. The whole tone of the thing changes. If I start to turn the overdrive up and maybe I turn the level up a little bit, it's gonna start to really make pronounced differences to the sound. So let's play with that for a little bit. I'm gonna turn these controls and see what it does. Turn it off. What does the tone control do? Let's go back to this. Come on, turn yourself back on. Quite a big difference there. What about the overdrive control? Quite clean down there. What about all the way up? So in this context, running into our clean amplifier, this overdrive pedal is having quite a big effect on the tone. Let's take a look at the other amplifier we've got, and this may be a little noisy, but I'm not worried about that, which is our JCM 800. So let's take a listen to that all nice lonesome. Great sounding amp. That's a capture of my own personal one. Very cool. Now let's throw the overdrive pedal on and let's just remind ourselves what it did when we did the clean amp. Listen to how big of a difference it makes. It's gone from a clean to a dirty sound, but what about on the dirty amp? It basically sounds like the same amp with the gain control turned up. Do you hear that? Let's try it again. Here we go. Not worlds of difference there. Now, that is interesting because what this tells us is that things that are this side of the signal chain towards the speaker if this guy here, this amplifier, has a very pronounced impact on the tone, it's going to push back on everything that's on this side of it. Whereas if this is comparatively transparent, it's going to allow the character of these guys to come through more clearly. And once again, by characterful, what we mean usually is either has a very pronounced EQ curve or is introducing a lot of distortion, which is the most common bit. So another good example of this would be a fuzz pedal. So hopefully I'm not going to run out of processing power, but I'll show you some QC tricks to make this work if you want me to. We'll get there in a second. So we'll do a silicon fuzz. Wow, that is already a big deal. So fuzzes, like overdrives, they're pedals that make gain. So if I throw this on, turn it off, here's a clean amp, on. Yeah. I'm gonna stay here for a little while, so I wonder if it's worth us doing a little picture-in-picture so we can see my little face in the bottom corner. We'll figure that out. James is on the helm. He's going to figure that out as we go. Anyway, so I've got this here. I'm going to turn my fuzz on. Let's now go to the overdrive. We'll turn that on as well. Notice the overdrive is to the left of the fuzz, which means it is before the fuzz in our signal chain. Listen to the effect it has on the tone. It just makes it more. Now, if I switch this order, if I now go from fuzz into overdrive, there's the overdrive, there's our fuzz, watch what happens now. Oh, look, it's me. I'm moving across the bottom of the screen. Hey, well done, James. Okay, yeah, let's see some love for James in the comments, by the way, right? You guys, James is working really hard here. He's the only one of us putting a shift in. I'm just playing with paddles. Anyway, take a listen to this. Well, that's different, isn't it? So when the overdrive is in front of the fuzz, because the fuzz has a lot of character, it minimizes the impact of the overdrive in terms of the overall sound. Now, that's not to say it's not worth putting an overdrive in front, but it changes the way it doesn't change the fuzz is like EQ or the way it sounds per se. It just kind of like gives it some more of the stuff. So if we do it here, same over here. That makes a really big difference when this overdrive is the other side of our fuzz. Because we've got a big character here, this is now filtering out that big character. This big character is being fed through this relatively transparent thing, so it's doing its filtering upon it. So this is an example of how order matters really well with this. We've got some requests if we can turn the voice up just a little bit from our friend Paul. I'm sure we can accomplish that. I'm sure we can turn the voice up just a teeny tiny bit. I am blaring some guitar at you guys. So let's now, as a bit of an absurdist take on this, let's take the dirty amplifier and let's stack the fuzz in front of it, knowing that overdrive this side gives us very little effect on our fuzz. Overdrive this side gives us a lot of effect on our fuzz. We're going to need a noise gate for this because this is going to be very, very noisy, but I'll just figure that out myself. So we'll quickly turn the one on over here. There we go, that'll do. Thanks, Neural DSP, well done. Let's throw on our dirty amp. Here's the fuzz is active. Here's the dirty amp with fuzz. Now there we've got two big personalities interacting. We've got two big colourful sounds that are both battling for supremacy here. And it's the one at the end that usually wins, but in this case the fuzz is kind of holding its own. Now if I turn my overdrive on in front of the fuzz, in front of the dirty amp, it just kind of adds more fuzz. But if I put it here, you would think, like it was with the clean amp, it's going to completely change the sound of the fuzz, but it won't. Why? Well, it does, but it doesn't completely change it in the same way that it did through the clean amp. Why? Because we still have this big personality going over here, this big flavorful sound, which is our amplifier, a dirty amplifier. So in terms of stacking pedals for this, stacking overdrive pedals, or fuzz pedals and any kind of drive pedals, you can think of drive pedals as being similar to amplifiers in terms of their function. They add distortion, they add an EQ curve, they add color to our sound, which takes us from that dry DI sound that we had before, which is what happens when we turn everything off like this. Gross. This, still gross. Speaker, palatable. Fuzz, that's the overdrive, here's the fuzz. This amp being very powerful really does, it's steering the ship here. So, stacking overdrive pedals, if you're going into a dirty amplifier, it's going to minimize the tonal impact of your pedals regardless. So don't be concerned. You want it to be right, but don't expect it to be night and day if you're stacking pedals into a dirty amplifier. You should still do this. It's a cool thing to do, but you won't have this profound effect that maybe you get if you're running into a clean amplifier. So let's now take a look at some more overdrive stacks by changing our fuzz out for another very common overdrive. And this is going to be very common. It's the least common overdrive in the entire world. It's the Klon Centaur. But as far as we're concerned, let me remind myself where the Centaur is in this. We do have one, but I'm not sure I can find it. Where is the Centaur? Myth Drive, that'll do just fine. So that is the Mythos Klon clone. I think it's a golden fleece or something. Same deal. So now we have a Klon, we have a tube screamer, right? Remember the order of these. It's like the shell game, only with effects. So if I turn this on, that's our Klon type pedal. Over here, that's a tube screamer type pedal. It's a bit of a sad sounding thing, all on its own, but it's kind of cool when we start to stack them. Excuse me, I'm gonna cough just for a second. I've been talking a lot today and I'm very dry. So let's go with the Klon into our clean amp, and then we'll switch the tube screamer on. The tube screamer is now after our Klon. We can think about this as stacking overdrive pedals. It's very common, a very common way of doing this. So if I go Klon into clean amp, and now we throw the tube screamer on, well, that's radically changed the sound of our Klon. However, if I put it before the Klon, now it's just going to give it a bit more juice. Here's the Klon. With tube screamer. Not a night and day difference. It's letting the Klon do its thing, but it's just giving it a bit more beans. If we wanted to go in the other direction, we could. We could use the tube screamer as a filter for our Klon. For example, if we turn the gain down on the Klon a little bit, and maybe we turn the level up on the tube screamer, we can kind of take some of that strong personality out of the Klon, take some of the strong personality, it's easy for me to say, out of the tube screamer. Here's the clean amp. There's the Klon. Here's the tube screamer. Ultimately, because the Klon has the stronger personality and more gain in it, which is usually what this means, it's going to be more filtered by downstream things. So if it's got a strong personality, the downstream effects will filter it more, but it'll also minimize the impact of effects on this side, which may be a good thing. Let's take a look at a situation where that might be a good thing, where minimizing impact is something we want. So for this, I'm going to treat us to a new row. So we'll go to, let's maybe go over here to, where are we, multi-output, because I'm going to need some more processing power here. So I'm going to send this to row 3, which basically means now, it's a bit more visualization for you, but now what we can do, we'll go to multiple outputs over here, we can put our cab over on this thing, and we'll drag some of these amps down here because we'll need the space. So now, just to remind you, the signal chain here is going from here to here, which is now coming back into here. So think about this as looping back into this, just for the purpose of demonstration, right? I know it's a little less easy to see, but I need the power because this is going to run out of batteries, metaphorically speaking, quite soon. So let's throw another amplifier in here. This is another capture that I have available. You guys can have this if you want. You're more than welcome to it. My captures, I'm going to go with, if I can find it, this guy over here, which is Super Sheriff Hot 2 P2, which is a very cool capture. I like this one a lot. This is the second hot channel with the second presence mode engaged on the Super Sheriff, which is the naming convention. There's our amp. It's a very cool sound. It's like a hot-rodded British amplifier. It's got a big personality. So if I throw the Klon in front, we're not going to notice a huge difference. Tube Screamer, same thing. Not making a big difference to the tone overall. So this begs the question, why would you put an overdrive pedal in front of an amplifier that has a big, strong character like this Super Sheriff? Well, the answer is response. Because while this amplifier is going to minimize the sound impact of devices over this way, these are going to influence the way that this amplifier feels. And feel is very important with this. So let's take a listen to the Tube Screamer set up in this classic configuration. Once again, it's overdrive low, level reasonably high. We would maybe consider this to be a boost type configuration. So if I go to my clean amp, which is over here, this is going to do basically nothing. So here's on, there's off. It's not doing anything. It's just adding a little bit of extra mid-range fluff and fur. Maybe it's taking out some low end. But if I now put this in front of my big dirty amp, take a listen to these low chugs. With the Tube Screamer on, that's interesting because what that's doing is pulling out some low end and adding a little bit of mid-range aggression, which is exactly what it did here. But because it's doing it in front of this very dirty amplifier, what it's now doing is it's shaping the sound of the guitar going into the amp. So it in turn makes the amp respond and distort in a different way. So the amplifier that we're playing through, this distorted amplifier, can only distort what's already there. So it can only distort what's being fed into it. And if you feed certain levels of treble, middle, and bass into it from your guitar, it will behave in a certain way. But if you alter those with a pedal, you can rapidly change and very radically change the feel of your amplifier without even particularly affecting the overall tone. So this is a very overlooked aspect of guitar signal chain, really, is feel, because you can make a decent sound with most things. And I'm just going to go on a little bit of a soapbox here for a second. There are a lot of folks who make a big critical mistake when it comes to discussing this sort of thing. And I don't want to throw anybody the bus here, but it's these guys who go, the only thing that matters is how it sounds in a mix. Only thing that matters is how it sounds in a mix, bro. Like, look, basically anything can sound good in a mix, right? If it's not just total rubbish, it can sound good in the mix. The reason that we have all this, like, this technology, the reason we have all these devices, in my opinion, is not to make it sound night and day better than other devices. Some bits do, some bits don't. The feel aspect of it is so important because the musicality in a performance comes from the player. Yes, the EQ signature comes from the gear, but the musicality comes from the player. And feel influences a skilled player in so many ways. It's like the princess and the pea kind of thing. You can just feel when it's off, and it don't work for you. I sat down with Jared James Nichols recently, and he has this thing where if he plays a guitar and it doesn't feel right, and if he plays an amplifier, it doesn't feel right, he'll just go, nope, not doing it. Which I've got a lot of respect for. A lot of respect and a lot of time for that, because I totally recognize it myself. Feel and the way your gear responds is as important, if not more important, than the tone. Believe me on this, right? Here we go. Paul with the wisdom. Music is always for the listener, but the musician is the first listener. 100%, right? If it feels good and you're playing well because you're satisfied and you're happy and you're playing good stuff and it's working for you, if you're not a very skilled player, you might not notice, but a skilled player will always pick this stuff up. Some people can just work through it. It's fine. And I can usually soldier on, but I'm not going to be inspired. But if you're inspired and you're turning in inspired performances because you have like the skill and you have the sensitivity to the feel thing, then things that feel good will make you play better, and that is definitely something people will notice. So tone's much more than just the EQ, in my opinion. So let's go back to our overdrive thing. Let's do one more example, and let's maybe explore some leads, and then we'll do some other types of effects. So over here, I'm going to go with my dirty sound. That's got a certain sound to it and a certain feel to it. Did you notice a difference there? Let's turn it off. It's certainly not a question of more gain. It's not really adding more gain, but what it is doing is it's making the notes feel juicier. They feel bigger and plumper and rounder, and I can play them and they're going to do certain things in the mid-range that sound and feel really cool. That is all to do with the subtle way that pedals that are placed in front of a very high gain sound will shape the response way more than they'll shape the tone. It's an interesting thing. I like it. So let's move away from these dirty sounding pedals, and this time what we'll do is we'll move on to some other types of effects. And specifically, we need to talk about modulation, and we need to talk about like wet effects, reverb and delay. Let's start with some modulation, and we'll begin with perhaps the most ubiquitous modulation pedal. Like it's like one of these, like, I don't know, like I say modulation, you say chorus. Modulation, chorus. Modulation, chorus. You get the drill. I don't know why that came to my mind, but there we are. So here I have a chorus pedal, which is in blue. Specifically, it's a Boss style chorus pedal. And I'm going to drag my clean amp and my dirty amps back onto the grid up here so they're next to it. So let's go with the clean amp over here. And we're going to experiment with the idea of having this pedal in front of the amplifier and then behind the amplifier. I'm going to ask James to do me one more huge favor on this because my laptop is about to die. So I'm going to ask James to plug it in. It's in my bag, mate, if you don't mind. I've got a MagSafe in there. Prepare to fail. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So here's our chorus pedal. And then over here, yeah, there should be a MagSafe cable in there. That'll one of the magnetic ones. If I move it over here, there's not a night and day difference between the sound of our chorus here and the sound of our chorus here. It's doing stuff. It's not really having a huge profound effect. You can put it wherever you want, is what I'm saying. So with modulation effects, you want to run them into a front end of a clean amp. They're going to sound basically the same as if you run them in behind a clean amp. We'll talk about what it means to be behind that amp in just a second, because that has implications in terms of how you would rig it up. So let's do the same thing, but this time we'll do it with the very dirty amp, which is our Super Sheriff. So here, I'll put it after the amplifier, which is this. Listen to the whoosh of this pedal. James is working like an absolute trooper trying to get this laptop plugged in. We did not plan for this. Now listen to the whoosh. I don't think that's quite in. Now let's move it to this side. Ooh, listen to how thuddy that is and how the sparkle has changed very drastically. Whereas here, much more pronounced. Now what you'll notice with this is that James is saving the stream right now, says Marcin. James is indeed saving the stream. Everyone needs a James in their life. So there's two of me. There we go, I've gone now. So the, where was I going with this? Okay, yeah, so the chorus being after the amplifier in this case really, really profoundly changes the effect of the sound. It changes the effect on the sound. You can really hear it. You can hear the chorus when it is behind the amplifier. When it's in front of this big gainy amplifier, not so much. Now you may be saying to me, but Nick, I can't put the chorus after the amplifier. The amplifier has to go into the speaker. If I plug my chorus pedal between my amplifier and my speaker, the amp will die, it'll explode. And it will. So please don't do that. But we can put these effects after the amplifier by putting them in the amplifier's effects loop. The reason for this is the amplifier's effects loop is an insert point where you can plug effects in that comes after the majority of the amp's distortion. So it's a way, if you put a chorus in the effects loop, you're essentially putting it after the distortion part of the amp. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So let's demonstrate this with an even more pronounced modulation effect. We'll change this for a personal favorite of mine, which is a phaser. For this, we'll do the MX Phase 95. It's a Phase 90, right? So in front of the amplifier, here we go. Quite subtle. It is the classic Van Halen phaser. Where it's just adding a little bit of extra movement to the sound, but not really changing the overall EQ. Put it after the amp. Now the amp's all whooshy and weird. It doesn't sound the same. And for one more demonstration on this, let's do an even more pronounced modulation effect, which will change this device over here. We'll use a tremolo, because the tremolo is really going to make a big difference here. So if we do just a standard tremolo, here we get this. Tremolo is an effect that, oh, I need to actually do the thing. Change device. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. I need to do that again because I messed up the flanger. Let me just try that again. Sorry, my mistake. Let's try that once more. So here's the phaser. We're on the Phase 90. Here is, that's better. I thought it didn't sound that convincing. I was like, oh, that's a shame. I hope nobody notices. Here's our Phase 90. Let's do it again. In front of the amp, the classic Van Halen sound. That works a treat. If we put it after the amp, oh, that's what I was looking for. It makes the whole amp whooshy. That does not sound like King Edward. This, over this end, does. If you've ever tried to do the Van Halen trick, where you have the phaser and you want it to sound like Eddie, but you were disappointed with how it sounded, but you had it in the effects loop, that's why. Because this amp, this sound is, it's quite a characterful sound. If you place it after the amp, it's gonna filter it too much. If you place it in front of the amp, it's just gonna add some subtle movement in the way that the Van Halen thing does. Now, let's go to the tremolo, because we said we're going to do the tremolo, so let's go to that. Tremolo, Let's choose the actual tremolo. I'll actually engage it this time and won't make a silly mistake. So if I go here after the amplifier, which is where we traditionally find trems, a big change in the volume, the amplitude. Let's put it in front of the amp. Is it even on? Is the question. Because, once again, quick reminder, if you've got something with a lot of character, like this very dirty amp, that will minimize the sound of everything this side. And these all become essentially response pedals rather than sound pedals. We're now going to get some wet effects. Timothy Appling's got a great insight onto some wet effects though. He says he runs all of his time-based effects to the amp loop and everything else through the front end. He's got a loop switcher that corresponds with his amp cabinet switch, and when switching amps and cabs, a man after my own heart, Timothy, because that's exactly how I run my stuff too. So, time-based effects. Now, what are time-based effects? They are, we're going to get rid of the very dirty amp for this because I don't think we need it anymore. And we'll get rid of these pedals as well. So we'll just clear our workspace. So let's go back up here and let's change this to multi-out. Where are you? So we've got just one row to contend with now. That's cool. That's much better. Time-based effects. Time-based effects come in two very clear flavors: reverbs and delays. But they are the same. They are the same thing because reverbs, digital reverbs, are made up of delays. They're just loads of little delays all smushed together. Let's take Plate Lush, which is a very nice and relatively low CPU reverb. So if I throw this on here, our Plate Lush sounds like this. Here's a clean amplifier with the Plate Lush after it. A very pretty reverb, really nice. If I now run this in front of the amplifier, it's basically no different because the amp is clean. Go over here, no difference. Okay, what if we do it with a dirty amp? So dirty amp's over here. That's interesting. Let's go over here with the reverb after the amp. It sounds like the amp's in a big cave. What about if I go over this way? It sounds like there's a big cave in the amp. Surprise, surprise. So the amp's in a big cave. Now the big cave is in the amp, which is kind of ridiculous, but you understand what I'm saying here, I hope. This is absolutely getting hammered by this amplifier. And this is an interesting thing with time-based effects. Time-based effects respond very profoundly to a little bit of compression and distortion. If you run a time-based effect into a distorted sound, it will have the effect of completely changing the tail qualities, i.e. how long it takes to decay and the shape of the decay, but it'll also bring the mix up really, really, really loud. So if you have a reverb, you want to run it in front of a distorted amp, you can get away with it by turning it down really low. So over here, for example, let's just creep this in until we get just a touch. Wouldn't be my first choice, but that kind of works. If we put it after the amplifier, it'll seem like there's basically no reverb now. There's nothing there. So that's an interesting thing with reverb. We also need to do delay. It's basically the same thing. So if I go to delay, I'm going to give you guys a cheat code on delay for this as well, because there's some confusion around delay. We'll do just a simple digital delay. Over here, we'll do digital delay. We have got option of simple delay, but we'll choose this one. There we go. Let me take the sound and put it after our amp, the equivalent of going in the effects loop. Notice how those repeats are at about the right volume. Now if we put it in front of the amp, whoa, it's just annihilating those repeats. It's turning them up so, so hot. So what we do, we turn the mix down. If you want it in front of the amplifier, just turn the mix down and it'll be okay, like this. I beg your pardon, I'm going to cough. I beg your pardon. Now, this is different to the reverb though, because here, because we had to turn the mix down and we had to make the repeats quite quiet, now the guitar's signal, which is also going into the front of the amp, being so much louder than the delay, basically hides the delay. There is no delay there while I'm playing. The delay only comes through when I stop, because this guitar signal being so much louder than this, when the repeats are not on their own, when they're mixed in with the guitar signal, they just get crushed in with the guitar signal, so you don't hear them. You get this. You'd be forgiven for thinking there's no delay here. Until I stop. Which gives us the Ain't Talking About Love trick, which is where we have a tiny delay. Less than that, literally just cracked open. To give us this little groove. So everybody plays dun, dun, dun. Don't have a whammy bar, so I'm going to play it like that. It's a... Need a bit more gain for me to carry that off. That little delay is really interesting there. We cannot get the same effect over at this end. Now, let's go one more direction with this, which is a little bit on delay types, cheat codes for delay. So I'm going to give you the cheat code on this, because we have a whole bunch of different types of delays. Unless you know specifically what you want, like I really want this circular delay, you may be looking at these and going, what's the difference between an analog delay, a tape delay, and a digital delay? Which one do I want? Help. That's the top of my head. Well, so here's the cheat code, right? Cheat code is this. What happens to the delay repeats as they get quieter? So as the repeats diminish in size. Digital delay repeats basically stay the same. So it's the same sound, only a bit quieter. Analog delay repeats get darker as they repeat. Tape delay gets thinner as it repeats. So we'll say it again. Digital stays the same, basically. Analog gets darker as the repeats go on. Tape gets thinner as the repeats go on. Here's digital. They just get quieter. Here's analog. Hear how those repeats get darker as we go on? Here's tape. Same thing. Hear how they get thinner as they decay. That's the cheat code. So for delay repeats, what you do is you choose whether you want it to get thinner as it repeats, darker as it repeats, or just stay the same and get quieter, and choose an appropriate delay for that. That's the delay cheat. Anything else? Details in it. So last thing we'll do, folks, is I'm going to quickly reload, and I'll put together once again for you the signal chain that I had in the intro, just to show you what's going on here, because this is reminiscent of my personal signal chain, which is going to reference Helmet Strap's question, which is how I get a massive sound at such low volumes. It's very kind of you, man. Thank you very much. What I do is we start with a greenback cabinet, my personal favorite. We start with a Victory Super Kraken set for my Victory Super Kraken solo settings, which you can get my capture of. It's on my personal Cortex Cloud. That's it. And then after the cab, as if it were mic'd up and applied later in the studio, we do a dual delay, which gives us different repeats left and right. Notice this ping pongs around your head. And for a little bit of flavor, we throw on just a tiny touch of ambience. The ambience is not really doing a lot. Without it, it's just a little tiny bit of room realism, delay on, and that's the sound. That is literally the whole sound. It's Super Kraken, greenbacks, bit of delay, tiny bit of ambience. That is the whole sound. Folks, I want to thank you so much for coming along with us this evening. It's been great fun. I love talking about this sort of stuff. We are streaming all the way through January. We're streaming through July too, but all the way through January we'll be streaming. We are going to be attending the NAMM show for the next 2 weeks. So if you're at NAMM, say hello. We'd love to see you there. There will be streams. They will not be live. We'll be doing 2 pre-recorded streams for the next 2 weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be more gear stuff. We've got some cool stuff on amps, and we've got a very cool one on tricks that you may not be doing with your guitar's controls. So make sure you tune in for those, and we will see you for the next live stream in 3 weeks' time. There will be streams next week and the stream afterwards, but there'll be pre-recorded ones because we're going to be at NAMM. Folks, thank you so much for coming. My name's Nick Jennison. Don't forget to do all the YouTube stuff on the way out the door. You know the drill. Go to guitarinteractivemagazine.com for news, reviews, interviews, etc. Go to licklibrary.com for all of the lessons. I'm going to play out on this lovely signal chain. Don't forget you can go to my personal Nick Jennison on Cortex Cloud, get all of the captures that we've done today for free. They're just there. Go and have them. I want you to have them. And I'm going to play out on that same track we played in the intro because it's a lot of fun. And I will see you guys. I will actually properly see you in 3 weeks, but I will see you in spirit on our pre-recorded streams for the next 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Nick Jennison. See you soon. Here we go.